the BumbleKast. I'm your host, Ian Flynn, the Bumble King, and joining me as my muse, as always, Kyle, JCRB Kraus.
I am here to... What am I here for, Ian? What is my trope? What is my existence?
Well, since you're a muse, you're here to amuse me.
Aha! There we go. Do I amuse you? Am I your court jester? The answer to both of those questions is probably yes.
And even if you didn't, I do it enough for myself, so really, I'm good. I'm full of chortles.
Okay, good. Good. How you doing this week, Ian?
I'm exhausted, sir. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm tired too, but not for the same reasons. It's just because my sleep has been broken. While you've actually been busy, so you've had a lot on your plate.
I hope everyone was able to watch the stream, where I got to show up with the Sonic Team folks and talk about the comic. That was a lot of fun. They are super awesome people over in the Sega Sonic America offices, but it never fails, Kyle. Never fails. I got on the plane to go to California, and that's when everyone got back to me on everything they needed and then stuff. And it's like, I am literally leaving the country and this coastline. Why now?
Of course. Never fails. But hey, now you got plenty of work, I hope. Now you got plenty of work, I hope.
Yeah. But me being me, I didn't, decide to focus on just what I had to do in Cali. I, immediately started picking away at it in the hotel room and, collapsed at the end of day one. But that's not the point. I am back. I'm here. I'm still working through stuff. But you know what is also on the docket? It's BumbleKast, and that's what we're doing. Why are you not sleeping?
I don't know, Ian. I don't know. I'll sleep.
I hate that.
I'll sleep like 5 hours, and then I'll get up, and I'll feel like, well, maybe I could and should go back to sleep, and then I don't. And then a few hours later, I'm like, okay, now I'm finally tired. So then I finally go back to sleep for another couple hours. But it's kind of like, why can't I just sleep all in one go? Like, I know there's some studies that have said, doing that split sleep where you sleep like 4 hours, wake up for a little while, and then go back to sleep is actually better for you. But I don't feel better. No. I don't know. I'm confused and sad. So that's what's going on.
Well, since we're both a big pile of hot messes, let's actually move on to the topic at hand.
Sure, yep.
And hopefully be coherent.
Yep, we don't have anything else to announce or get to this week, I don't think, so let's just go ahead and jump right into our main topic.
Which is provided by one of our patrons.
Yes, Koopaling Crew 64 suggested this one, thank you. Suggested narrative tropes. Suggested that we talk about maybe a specific trope, but we're opening this up, we're broadening this to all kinds of tropes, because it's more fun to talk about multiple tropes.
Yeah.
Maybe we could get into some more detail later, but for now, let's just do a broad overview of them.
I mean, tropes in general, it seems to be kind of like a ugly term nowadays online with folks who frankly don't know what they're talking about.
Pretty much.
Tropes are, the trends in storytelling that we see crop up, and it doesn't just apply to what we see today. We can apply these tropes to stories throughout human history to see where, what worked early on, what has endured, what is still popular. And tropes are not something that you can avoid, because whatever you do, most likely you can find a way to interpret it as, oh, well, it's just like this. Where tropes become a problem is where you take that fundamental idea, that kind of simplified plot point, and don't embellish upon it. You rely on the conventional exception of that trope and say, okay, I know that everyone loves when the guy gets the girl, so that's the story. That's tedious. That's boring. If there's no thought put into it, then yeah, that's the trope, and it doesn't do anything. Right. Or if you really want to use this one trope, like the good guy has that hidden weapon right out of sight and gets one over on the bad guy, that can be really cool. But if you don't build the scene to that moment, if you're just waiting and expecting everyone to go, oh, he did the thing, I like that thing, then that's where the tropes become your undoing.
Yeah, when you pull a Deus Ex Machina out of nowhere, yeah, that's no fun.
But just casting a broad net here, I know there's going to be examples that folks will bring up later. It's like, why did you say this? Like, oh yeah, I love that, or no, I hate that, or whatever. One that I really dig, and it's extremely difficult to pull off, is the planned it all along trope. Where the villain reveals that the hero has stumbled right into the trap, even though the hero thought, haha, I'm subverting you. No, this is all according to Kikiku. Or the other way around. The villain thinks he's got the hero on the ropes. The hero has struggled, and haha, I have vanquished you. And the hero's like, I did this. What? No, curse you, Link. Curse you, sages. That kind of thing. I'm thinking of specifically the kind of like the Ozymandias out of Watchmen, I did it 30 minutes ago reveal. The whole book is this classic deconstruction of the superhero mythos, and we get the most superheroic moment in the story where they've invaded the enemy's stronghold and they've confronted him and they've cornered him, and he surely cannot win now. And no, he already won. All he's doing is paying them lip service. And that kind of gotcha moment feels so good when it's done right. If you don't build up to it properly, if you don't relay those breadcrumbs, then it just feels contrived. And it kind of plays into what's currently plaguing a lot of media, the whole subversion of expectations, which is becoming a trope now.
Yeah.
Where it's fine if you build your audience in a certain direction and then have that gotcha moment, but it isn't intrinsic to the storyline. If you have not constructed it so that it makes sense within the narrative and within the characters, then all you're doing is lying to them for the entire story, and nobody feels good about being lied to.
Yeah. That happens a lot. It's getting pretty annoying these days. But it's not a bad thing. It's just something that people are relying on a bit too much, I think. Creators.
Game of Thrones, the TV series, being the current target
yes.
of this discussion, and how you can very, very easily pick things done in the later seasons, compare them to statements or facts made in the first season, and it's not a matter of the characters changing their minds or growing in that new direction. It's a direct contradiction that has no bearing on where that character was going. It's, we want to have this moment, so we're putting it in there and trying to explain it away, and that doesn't work.
Right.
Let's see. Another tropey thing I like is the personal catchphrase that means something to the character. I'm not talking like Bugs Bunny, "What's up, Doc?" That's just a catchphrase for a one-liner. That's a gag. I'm thinking like specifically Captain America's "I can do this all day." The first time we hear that line is when he's backed into an alley where he's facing down a bully that he has no hope of overcoming, but he still perseveres because it's what is right. The line gets reused later when he's facing down Red Skull, where it's, again, he's outmatched, he's facing down the bully, but the core belief is still there. He's standing up for what is righteous, and he will get beaten into the dirt and still stand by it. So when we have it brought up again in Civil War, and Iron Man is beating the ever-loving snot out of him, and he still stands there, it's like, aha, I get it. This is where he's making his moral stand. But at that point, the line had been played out. It became the trope for the character. And so they lampoon it in Endgame, which is delightful. You have this nice callback. It's, it still stays true to the character, but you're not making it a crutch for the character. That's not his identity anymore. It's, yeah, he said the line, but we can enjoy it in a new context. That, to me, is handling it well.
Yeah. It's
kind of like
meaningful one-liners, but you're not leaning on it. They end up not leaning on it so much that it just gets overplayed.
Yeah. I am Iron Man. Tony accepts his role as a superhero as the first one in the public eye in the first movie. He says it at the end of Endgame, and spoilers. I'm sure everyone's seen it by now. You have to. Sorry, statute of limitations is run out on spoilers for this. It's his last living line of dialogue. He is accepting that he must sacrifice himself for the greater good. He is accepting his role as the superest of superheroes. That's where it's done right.
Yeah, and
that's where I like it. I dig it.
And it brings the whole story for him and his arc full circle, in a sense, where he's the one who started this whole thing, and he's the one to pretty much, in a sense, finish it, at least at that point in the story. So, yeah, I'd like that too. It works.
Princess Bride. Hello. My name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die. That is a masterclass lesson because that line defines everything about Inigo. And they drill it into the ground to the point
they really do.
It almost becomes a joke. But when it comes down to the moment, when he gets exactly what he wanted with his revenge fantasy, then it becomes this triumphant moment where you're chanting it with him on the screen. I don't care how many times you've seen the movie. During that fight, you are quoting it with him with the same inflection and timing. It's a good one. Just thinking about it gives me goosebumps because it's used so well. And I love it so much. And I can't immediately think of any bad examples to juxtapose with it. But
yeah, I can't either. I can't think of anything. I don't know. There's a certain villain trope where I don't know if it's the same, really in the same vein or not, but there's a certain villain trope that I like that's where the villain is just so he just doesn't care about any of the problems that the heroes face. I'm thinking for example, my biggest thing that I can think of would be in the Street Fighter movie. Whether that's a great movie or a terrible movie is up to you. But there's the one point where he meets Chun-Li, and Chun-Li tells the story of how he came and he and his men came and raised her village and killed her father and everything. And he's like, but for me, it was Tuesday. He just didn't care. It's just so far beyond anything that is so important to Chun-Li. He's just so far beyond that. He just doesn't care. And I love that in a villain, where a villain just is yeah, whatever. I don't care about... I don't know anything about you. I don't care anything about you. You are nothing to me. I love that in a villain. It's just they just don't care about the most important thing in the hero's life. So that's fun.
Almost along that same vein, Kagato out of the original Tenchi Muyo series, I freaking adore because he is on such a different level than all the other characters. He is just obscenely overpowered, and he has fun with it. Sure, the other heroes get a little bit of a hit in here or there. Maybe they catch him by surprise, but it's never an end gamer. It's never something that changes the stakes. It's just, you caught me by surprise. Let me completely undo your progress and come out on top again with seemingly no effort.
Right.
And that kind of the heroes are up against the wall, which we'll be getting to in another favorite of mine in a minute, is just really fun. And they don't overplay it because you have that one confrontation and then he loses because of one thing that he didn't figure out. And he pretty much gracefully accepts defeat as he dies. Now, I don't know if there's more to the character because I know there's more material beyond just the anime, but just within that context, that to me is a lot of fun, is that villain who is not only so far beyond the heroes, but he's also having fun with it. Right. It's not the domineering, sneering, I'm so much powerful, you're just motes to me. That's boring. It's not really, if you have the state of mind to demean someone, then you do care. You do see them as an individual or of something of value. If you, like what you were saying with the Street Fighter movie, if you don't care, then don't care. If you know that you are the apex predator and you are toying with your prey, have fun with it.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then kind of an extension of that, I love the heroes lose trope.
That's a good one.
You build up, you build up, you build up, you think the heroes have their moment, and nope! They don't! They really don't! Empire Strikes Back, Avengers Infinity War, Season 2 of Avatar The Last Airbender, and even partway through Season 3, where they think that they can attack during the solar eclipse, and oops! That doesn't work out, because again, you have to do it right, because otherwise it feels like a cheap win for the villain, or it feels like a cheap loss for the heroes, and there has to be some kind of stakes. There has to be some change, or otherwise it rings hollow. There's no point to the surprise that good does not triumph over evil. Luke loses a hand, they lose Han entirely. The dynamic is shifted up with Lando joining the team and then leaving with Chewie. Half the world's population is wiped out. Why did you kill T'Challa? He was awesome. How can you do this?
Yeah, right, exactly.
Zuko, why did you go bad? You just killed Aang. What? And from there, some of the most compelling things that a hero can do is claw their way back from the bottom. You want to root for the underdog. And by giving them that moment to rebuild, not just because they have to defeat the bad guy, you were already rooting for him there, but because you saw them get their stuff handed to them, you're like, oh, now there's even more stakes, and that little extra butter on the steak, it's seasoning to life, Kyle. I love it so much.
Yeah, it's good because it actually makes things more, it gives it more of an impact when they actually do triumph, because you're like, yeah, they're gonna do it, and then they completely fail, and it's utterly miserable, and everything's gone to crap, and it's just, it seems hopeless. It's all terrible. Everything's gone, and then all of a sudden you're like, yeah, they can come back. Yeah, and that's kind of what Endgame felt like. It was like just this big push to, finally bring everybody back. They finally realized they actually could do it, and that's, I think, helps make it more exciting. But of course, it also helps that there's some loss along the way. Some of it less desirable than others, but you win some, you lose some in these things, it seems like. But
a couple of video game examples. Chrono Cross.
Mm-hmm.
When Lavos just straight up nukes Chrono.
Are you thinking Chrono Trigger?
Okay, here we go. Final boss. Time to save all of time. Nope. You lost, and you lost big. The one character you couldn't swap out of your party. Oh, he's dead now. You lost it all. Or Skies of Arcadia, when the Valua Empire finds your island and they firebomb your island. The island that you spent so much time building up. The villagers and the crewmates that you assembled, they almost die. It's like, oh, well, I was already out to kick your collective butts, but now this is super personal. All right, back in the Delphinius. Moonstone Cannon freaking fire.
Yeah, that's a great one. I do enjoy that. It just makes it feel that much sweeter when they finally do overcome the villain and win. Or maybe they don't quite win, But still, it adds that little bit of extra. A little bit of extra, I like it.
Now, one trope that I'm not fond of is defanging the rival. When you have the rival to your main character, someone who's this fantastic foil who isn't the direct antagonist, and by the course of the story, they lose everything interesting about them. I'm looking at you, Piccolo. Knuckles, you suffer from this a lot.
This tends to happen
to kind of Vero from Gurren Lagann.
This tends to happen to ensemble dark horses when they want to make them more of a thing.
Yeah.
Like when they want to make Knuckles more of a thing, when they wanted him to be more part of the story, they tend to turned him into a hero and made him less awesome. So, yeah. It's kind of annoying.
Part of it comes from the hero's journey. They have to surpass those roadblocks. And the rival is usually that first roadblock, that first measure of their strength. So once they're overcome, they've served their purpose narratively, but you enjoy them so much you don't want them to go away. But then you run the risk of the Vegeta syndrome, where Vegeta is in the same rut he's been in more or less since, I don't know, kind of the Buu saga. I mean, you could debate about it, but now you could also argue that Vegeta's had the more interesting character growth versus Goku. But more specifically, I'm thinking Piccolo, who was the original, reason to worry, and was still pretty strong up until about middle of the Android saga, and then he kind of became a babysitter. He was no longer this force within the story. He was another one of Goku's ensemble. He was not the rival. You know? He was not the reincarnation, more or less, or the son, at least, of one of Goku's greatest villains. This should have been, something serious. It's just, he's one of the guys now, which in itself could be an interesting character arc, but they don't do anything with him.
Right.
Him being the mentor or father figure to Gohan could be an interesting arc as well, but nothing really happened with Gohan, and to a degree, Piccolo sank with him. So part of that is just the problem of the construction of the rival, what purpose they serve within the narrative versus, the hero. And I don't immediately have a good answer for that outside of that rival has to spin off to become the hero of their own story, because now they need to serve a new purpose. Otherwise, you have to think of new ways to reinvent that character, to reinsert them into the same role over and over again. And that's possible. But it really depends on what your story is and who the characters are and what greater purpose they're supposed to serve.
I feel like
if you're just...
I was going to say, I feel like that's what they do with Vile from Mega Man X. They just keep bringing him back, but he serves the same purpose every time. I think he's only been playable like once.
Right.
But outside of that, he's just the same type of rival where he's just kind of the guy you have to overcome. You face him down at the beginning, and then you face him down again at the end after you've become more powerful. And yeah, he kind of ends up serving the same role over and over, and he doesn't really grow or change. So, but at the same time, I'm kind of glad that they haven't defanged him. So
yeah, he's always a threat. It's just there's not a ton to him.
Right, exactly.
And another one that I really kind of just roll my eyes at, like, really, we're doing this again? And it's kind of fresh in my mind because been playing Fire Emblem Three Houses. The character that is this immortal, godlike being who does not age, who is all-powerful, but they look like they're a maybe 12-year-old girl, if we're being generous. And this shows up in a lot of media, but Fire Emblem in particular.
Especially anime.
I can think of this a lot. And it just feels skeevy to me. The idea of a childlike immortal is not inherently a bad thing. It can be really cool, and it can be one of those subversion tactics that, if used properly, can be really interesting. But a lot of times it really feels like they're putting in the context of, oh, you've got someone who looks like they haven't quite reached middle school, but they're dressed in about 2 inches of fabric all over, but it's okay. They're legal like 700 times over if you do the math. It's like, just, no. You're just sneaking in little girls and saying that they're of age. That's just ew.
It's awkward. And it's very awkward.
And it's
gross.
Always little girls. It's never like the little boy off to the side.
Nope.
Who all of a sudden reveals that he is the dragon from the beginning of times. Now, if it was little boys too, just in equal measure, I would accept that, oh, you're just being a prude and you've got a dirty mind. But no. If you can find me an example, I will happily see it, but good luck digging that one up.
Yeah, it's pretty rare for it to not be a little girl. It's very awkward. It's very weird. I don't know. Yeah, that one's the weirdest. Also, can we talk about sort of how this is a sidebar here. This is completely off track. I'm just thinking it's funny that the latest Fire Emblem is called Fire Emblem Three Houses. It seems like such a step down from like we've had Fates and Awakening, and now it's all of a sudden Three Houses. It's like what?
Well,
I know the story is it's three separate groups of.
It's about three houses. What do you want?
It's about three separate groups of kids in three different like schools in three different nations that are warring with each other. I know that, but it just seems like such a step down to go from. We've had like all these. It sounds so like powerful and awesome, like Awakening and Fates and all this stuff that seems like it would be world changing and stuff like that. Down to just like Fire Emblem, three houses. One's made of straw. One's made of. One's made of wood and one's made of brick. It's like, what?
I think part of that is, to me, it feels like this game is really dialing back on the trajectory they were going. Because Awakening saved the franchise.
Right.
Like, Fire Emblem was going to be done if Awakening didn't do well.
Yeah.
And it did spectacular.
Yeah.
And with that, they had, a lot of surprise recruitments and tons of pairing options and lots of alternate paths you could take with character pairings and kids from the future, and it was really neat. And then Fates said, okay, here's your two Pokemon versions, and here's the third one that's completely different, and they're all wildly different stories, and here's even more characters, a lot of them that you won't necessarily run into. Some of them are version exclusive. Also, there's future kids, even though it doesn't really make sense within the context of the story. And everybody can jump in bed with everybody else. And here's one where you play with their faces, and it's like, whoa, just time out. Can we dial it back a bit? And so, Three Houses has an extensive cast, but for the most part, what you see is what you get. And there are pairing options, but most of them seem to be platonic, and you can't really do anything until like the end game to really commit to some of them. And there are no future kids.
But there is a time jump.
You get. So I feel like there was kind of a backlash to Fate saying, all right, you're getting a little pandery here. Can you not? And their answer was, okay, let's calm everything down just a little and save all the pandering for the phone game.
Yeah. Let's not make this the dating sim so much. Even though that seems to be what people like most about it, is the fact that it is a dating sim. Seems to be the thing that saved it, apparently. I don't know. But I just think that was kind of funny. It's like it's just this gradual step down of, or not gradual, sudden step down of impact, seemingly, just based on the titles. It's just funny. So, I would say that one of my favorite tropes is ensemble casts, narrative tropes. I don't know why. I just love having different characters who fulfill different roles but get equal time, or at least they try to give them as much time as possible. That's a hard thing to do with ensemble casts too, especially if they're big ensemble casts. But I always like that, having different characters who can serve different purposes, who there isn't necessarily one who's all knowing, and there wasn't one character who's like necessarily the main character. Each of them has sort of their turn in the spotlight, and that's fun for me. I also like villain groups that are like that, like villain ensembles. That's harder to do though, and I don't see it as much.
That's much fewer and far between too, yeah.
But I do, yeah, villain groups are a lot of fun. So, villain groups seem to be a lot more common in comic books, as you have like the Sinister Six and stuff like that, or just general rogues galleries like Batman's Rogues Gallery and stuff like that, or Spider-Man's Rogues Gallery. So, but it's harder to do, and it's a lot less common. Usually you just end up kind of having a leader, a lead villain with a bunch of lackeys, and that's not quite what I'm talking about, but it's harder to do.
Minion force.
Yeah, it's harder to do that, but
now here's a question for you.
Yeah.
With that in mind, Masters of the Universe, would you count Skeletor's crew as an ensemble cast, or the big villain with the minions?
I got to be honest, I'm not sure because I've seen what little I've seen of. I haven't. I don't know, Ian. I have not seen very much of He-Man, nearly as much as I probably should. But I'm not nearly as familiar with that. I'm mostly familiar with Skeletor, so I'd say Skeletor is like the main guy. But I don't know.
Oh, sure. It's just, as you're talking about it, I'm thinking about, where do you really see an ensemble cast of villains, if ever? And then it kind of struck me that He-Man is kind of that. It's an ensemble group of heroes, an ensemble group of villains. He-Man and Skeletor clearly being the main hero and antagonist, of course.
Right.
But you have all these wacky characters on both sides that seem to get about equal billing. So,
yeah,
that might be one of those rare examples of what you're looking for.
Yeah.
Depending on the incarnation of the show, to be clear, but still.
Right. I feel like there might be some incarnations of Power Rangers that are like that. Kinda. Usually there's like a main villain or there's two main villains, though. I don't know. I am mostly familiar with the older versions of Power Rangers, not the newer ones. So It's hard to say. But there was that moment in time where they were there at least two main villains that were sort of sharing the spotlight in the original incarnation of Power Rangers, at least. Valerie in the chat brings up anime restyling applying to Western media. Not entirely sure what he means about that. I don't know.
I guess in terms of tropes of taking a lot of the tropes and conventions of anime and Eastern storytelling and how it's been applied to Western storytelling.
Oh, okay. I was thinking Western style or Eastern style Western productions like Avatar and stuff like that.
That too. I'm thinking off the top of my head stuff like early stuff like Powerpuff Girls and Samurai Jack, which didn't follow your typical 3-act format and were very action focused, where the action built into the story and was extremely fast paced, where visual storytelling was used a lot more than a lot of dialogue. There's no lesson of the day built in at the very end. There's no Sonic Says type of thing.
Right.
New stuff that going back to He-Man, the remake in early 2000s came out around the time there was that big resurgence in kung fu movies, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, all that. And you could see it reflected in the show because everybody spent at least 20 seconds spinning their weapons around and doing a pose before the fight started. And, half the runtime of the bloody episode was them setting up to actually do something.
Yeah, there were a lot of references to Crouching Tiger during that time, just everywhere.
Symbionic Titan is very, very clearly anime inspired, like you said, Avatar, the terrible Thundercats reboot. I think overall the trend for the longest time, at least in the early 2000s, was to kind of jump onto that bandwagon and follow a lot of those trends, which the mixed approach worked. I think in some places it really depended on if you understood why it worked in one interpretation and how to apply it to the other rather than just aping it. And that goes back to what I said at the beginning. Understanding the tropes and how to utilize them within the construction of your narrative is one thing. Relying on them as the story beats or as just what you're writing around just makes it feel hollow.
Right. And I was also just reminded of a good villain ensemble. It was during season 2 of DC's Legends of Tomorrow, where we had the Legion of Doom, which they, at least Lampshade in the show, is like a really stupid name. That show gets really silly, and I think both me and Scruffymatt adore that aspect of it, but it gets really silly. But it really was like a 3 villains on equal level, on equal footing. They also had their own, they definitely had their own interpersonal battles, though, too, frequently. So that made them really interesting, just in terms of them trying to struggle for power within their own group as well as against the heroes, against the legends. And so that was a lot of fun. That's definitely a good example. And Valerie says he means like where a show goes anime style for like one episode or something like that, and not like a western show goes anime style for a tiny bit or just like a reference or something. That's more of like a gag though, not a
unless it's like a dedicated parody episode. And 9 times out of 10, I am not really fond of those because they go for the easy jokes.
Yeah.
Making fun of Speed Racer, which hasn't been relevant in how long? Or, equating all of Pokemon to Pikachu or its analog, and, doing bad dub voices when the quality of dubs these days is far superior than what we grew up with. There are the occasional, the anime episodes and shows that are fun, the ones that treat the tropes as something to be celebrated or enjoyed, at least. Maybe lampoon it a little bit. You don't put it too high on a pedestal, but, have fun with the dynamics instead of saying, ha 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 ha, the animation is janky here.
Right. Yeah, I'd agree with that. It tends to kind of
that actually reminds me of
what are you doing? Why are you doing this? Anyway, go ahead.
It's not directly related, but it was a commercial for Cartoon Network Japan where it had somebody from Hanna-Barbera, maybe like Fred Flintstone, in a cafe being super bored watching yet another giant robot anime fight. And then the screen goes to static and it goes to like classic Hanna-Barbera stuff, like Augie Doggy and Huckleberry Hound and stuff. And Fred perks up and he calls in others, and like George Jetson comes in and Snidely Whiplash and all of them. And they're all really excited. And I was like, wow, as much as we look down our nose at some of the really cheap, churned out Hanna-Barbera stuff, that would be wildly different in terms of delivery, animation, and humor than anything that they would be used to. So I wonder just how much early Western animation has been received over there, where we would look at it and go, ooh, that's rough, buddy. And they're looking at it going, oh, this is really neat vintage Western animation. Why don't we do more of that over here? I don't know. It was a neat little bit of culture shock for me.
Yeah. All right. Have we exhausted this topic for now, Ian?
For now, I'm sure we can dive into it more. If you listeners have a specific trope you'd like us to delve into, or want us, or have a list of tropes of your own that you want us to kind of do a top 10 of or whatever, fire it our way. We'd love to have a topic to go on.
Yep, let us know. And thanks, Koopaling Crew 64, for the suggestion. We always appreciate topic suggestions, and we'll usually consider them. So if you guys have any ideas for future episode topics, let us know, and maybe we'll talk about it.
Now we're going to start into the Q&A, where we answer questions you've asked either on Twitter at BumbleKast, in our email at BumbleKast@yahoo.com, in the YouTube comments, or in the Patreon comments, messages, wherever. We're going to start off with the priority Patreon Q&A, where patrons pay a little bit up front to get bumped to the head of the line. If you would like to have priority in the Q&A, go over to patreon.com/BumbleKast and become a $5 member, or go over to Ko-fi.com and send us $5 along with your question and your name.
All right, first up, none other than Scruffymatt. Says, hey there, fellas, how are you going?
We already covered this, Scruffy. Were you not listening? Come on, man, catch up.
We are going through this episode. That's what we are going. That's how we are going. Who do you think is the most annoying character in video games? Omochao from the various Sonic games, Navi from the Legend of Zelda series, almost any survivor that you have to rescue from the Dead Rising games. Special mention goes to that one injured survivor in Dead Rising 2 who refuses to let you carry him, so you have to find a wheelchair, then try to push him through the hordes of hungry zombies, usually tipping him over at the slightest bump. Alternatively, you can let him walk and have to wait 10 minutes for him to limp his way from one end of the casino to another. Either way, screw that guy.
Going to get on a little bit of a tangent here, but because you specifically mentioned Dead Rising, I remember how much of a liability the survivors were in the first game, and how after a point when we had leveled up enough, we just let them die because they weren't worth the experience anymore. Whereas in Dead Rising 2, the able-bodied ones, at least, were almost game-breakingly great. Because if you had like 2 or 3, loaded them up with rifles, and positioned them correctly, and then instigated a boss fight, they would just lay down suppressing fire and like annihilate most of the enemies. Oh, got through some tough boss fights that way. But in terms of frustration of some of the ones that were not able-bodied, yeah, I remember that. But in terms of most annoying, Kyle?
Yeah, the thing is that it's not necessarily the characters themselves that annoy me. It's just what they do. I think the most annoying characters to me are the ones that completely stop the action to explain things to you, like Mega Man X navigators, where the game completely comes to a screeching halt just to tell you about something. That's annoying. But the problem is that I actually like the characters, like Alien in Mega Man X4 and 5, and then the rest of the navigators in X8. I actually like those characters. I just don't like the fact that the game stops completely to let them tell you about things. That's kind of annoying. Like forced tutorials, I think, are what mainly annoy me more than the actual characters. Omochao is kind of annoying, but also kind of endearing in her own weird way. His own weird way, I guess. I don't know. When in their own weird way.
Omochao at least gives you the option of being cathartic, of throwing it into traffic.
Yeah, that's true.
Navi you can't hit. Navi you can't silence. Navi is always there going, hey, Link, listen, Link, hey.
Yeah, that's annoying. At least Proxy in Hyrule Warriors just serves as Link's voice. She doesn't stop the action or force you to look at something until and pester you until you do.
And it's amazing how much more palatable Tattle was just by changing the voice sample to a jingle.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is about it, and maybe it's different for other folks, but for me, that little bit of tingle, tingle, tingle is much more acceptable than, hey! I don't know, it feels like somebody's really trying to get your attention in backseat drive versus your GPS updated. You know?
Yeah. Fi in Skyward Sword,
there we go.
She brings the game to a screeching halt very often.
Yeah,
Navi more so than Navi. More so than Navi. Yeah.
Fi, no thank you. I get it.
And it's funny because if Fi would leave you alone, I'd like her too. If she just stopped you, if she didn't stop you from stopping the game, if she just didn't bring the game to a screeching halt, she'd be fine. So yeah, that's annoying when they do that. So I don't know. It's mainly what the characters do more than anything. Because Fi is pretty cool in Hyrule Warriors. She doesn't bring the game to a screeching halt. You can actually play as her, and her moves are pretty awesome. So it just kind of depends on the game itself, really. Because sometimes
plus her introductory scene is one of the funniest things in the whole game.
Right, yeah. It's like, and some of the things are just like more. It's more less character driven hate and more just the mechanics of the game. More hate of the mechanics of the game. It's like, come on, stop bringing the game to a halt. I'm trying to play it here. Get out of my way.
I'm going to be kicking myself because I know there was somebody in some game that through the course of the story dies terribly, and I was happy for it. Like it was supposed to be this big sympathetic moment, and I'm like, no, you're gone now.
What's funny is...
you're dead. Your game is over. You were an asshole, and now you're gone.
What's funny...
I can't remember what that game was now.
It's funny, though, going back to Zelda real quick, is Midna frequently does the same thing that Fi does. But people like Midna. I don't know.
Midna...
Maybe
because she had sass, she had personality.
Maybe it's the hips. I don't know.
Yes, granted, at the end of the game, she turns into the absolute pinnacle of what the human form can be. But throughout the rest of the game, she's just this delightful little, not quite villain, not quite anti-hero. She's good. She's a great character.
She's an imp. She's a delightful little imp.
There we go. That's exactly it.
Yeah, she's just a a little. She's a little mischief maker. Not the game Mischief Makers, mind you. Good game. Completely different from what we're talking about, but still. Anyway. Yeah, that's mainly the thing that bothers me most. Is not the characters themselves so much as just the mechanics. So, but I can't think of any that would have to like wish death on outright. Like leave me alone, go away. I don't want you to die, but
maybe that kid in Spider-Man 2. Oh no, my balloon.
I don't know. Let's move on to the next question from Andrew D. I've heard the term Metal Virus Saga thrown around for Season 2. Is that the official name, and is there an official name for Season 1? Also, would you consider stuff that happens between seasons in the annuals as part of Season 1 or Season 2?
Yes, Metal Virus Saga is Season 2. Haven't really settled on a name for Season 1. Revenge of Neo Metal Sonic, just, I don't know. I wasn't really thinking of it as seasons just yet. That's something that kind of developed as the series went on. I'll think of something at some point, or IDW will. Doesn't matter. As for what happens when, I would count the annual as, I guess, part of Season 1, because Season 2 is kind of marked with Dr. Eggman's return to form, and that doesn't really reflect in anything in the annual.
Right. Alrighty. Let's move on into the standard Q&A. First up from PC the Unicorn. How did Relic and Knuckles meet in the new Sonic universe? Did someone accompany her and introduce her to Knuckles, or did she decide to travel to Angel Island unaware that someone lived there? Given how Knuckles has bad experience with strangers showing up on his island unannounced, I could see his and Relic's first meeting not going well, with Knuckles even believing she'd come to steal the Master Emerald like Eggman and Rouge have.
This is something that will be in Lost Hedgehog Tales, but I keep saying that, so let's just do this one real quick. My idea was that she was with the research group in Mystic Ruins during the events of Sonic Adventure. And when the island fell, she went to explore it and didn't get off before it went back up into the sky. So,
sounds like Relic.
On the one hand, she's on this completely alien island, 8 miles in the sky, freaking out. But on the other hand, it's full of all these ancient relics that no one's ever seen before. So she's freaking out because there's all this stuff here. And you're right, PC. Knuckles would not have been very welcoming at first. But because she's such a ruins nerd and he is interested in figuring out more about his own past, that would kind of bridge the gap between the two of them. And since she would respect his boundaries about the Master Emerald and would otherwise be clearly no threat, he eventually kind of warmed up to the idea of, all right, so maybe it's not too bad to have a little bit of company up here.
All right, next question comes from the Big RG. Not to offend you and or your former art team, but I want to know who thought Acklet's mustard shirt looked good. I'm sorry, but I remember looking at all the egg bosses sitting together, and he stood out for the wrong reasons.
I don't remember being mustard. It was more like a yellow color, but part of that was because the egg bosses were all on the color spectrum. You had, what was it? Battlelord was red, Thunderbolt wore orange, Acklet was in yellow. Who wore green? It's been so long.
I don't know, Ian.
Somebody was wearing green, Tundra was wearing blue, Cassie and Clove were in kind of the neutral whites and grays. And that was the whole idea. It was supposed to be kind of color coordinated, in part to help keep track of them all, in part to help them stand out against each other. And since Acklet being an Orca was just black and white, just having any color on him would make a bold statement. So went with the yellow there.
Alrighty. Are you offended by that, Ian? How are you?
No, not at all.
How dare you, the Big RG? I shake my fist at I don't care. I'm joking. Next question comes from Nicholas H. How come Sega said that Sonic's planet ain't called Mobius anymore? And that none of like Eggman, Sonic, Robotnik, they can't have family members anymore?
I don't know, really. I think part of it is once the franchise came directly under Sega of Japan's oversight back in the relaunch, more or less, of the franchise in '99, they wanted to jettison all things Western influence. Part of it, too, might be because the leniency of family members in other media was so grossly abused in the past that instead of saying, okay, you can maybe have one or two here in these situations, they just did a blanket, no, don't do that. I mean, obviously it doesn't fit perfectly because we have Gerald, who is a direct blood ancestor of Eggman, but then again, they also don't seem to like calling him Gerald Robotnik. They prefer Professor Gerald's. I don't know. Not my department.
Alrighty. And this one comes from Almiron R. Despite the comic plate taking place in the Two Worlds canon, you've said that Shadow's backstory is the same. So does that mean that Sonic's world is aware of humans or are aliens to them?
Not sure where you're getting despite from, because Shadow's game took place in the Two World canon. All of the 3D games are part of the Two World canon, as far as I know. So, yeah, that's a thing.
Yeah. Nice retcon there, Sega.
I'm writing the IDW comic under the assumption that similar events, if not the same, happened already. So Sonic Adventure 2, yada, yada, yada. Now, how much either world knows of each other, I think, is an interesting question to ask. You know, does the average animal on Sonic's world know about humans? Does the average human know about Sonic or, the other ones? I think there's kind of a passing knowledge of the two worlds, but that might be a nice way to introduce it in the book later. Someone like Tangle, who has been outside of the adventuring loop for up to this point, can go, wait, there's a whole other planet of Eggmans? Eggmen. How do you conjugate Eggman?
Eggman.
They're not all like Eggman. Let's just pop over to that planet. I'll show you how it goes. We can just pop over there. Yeah, sure, why not? We do it all the time. Tangle's little mind explodes. You know what? I like that. I'm going to put a note on that. Maybe I can do that sometime in the future.
There we go. Tangle's mind explodes over everything, though. It's what makes her so... I know,
she's so much fun.
It's what makes her so adorable and endearing, and I love her. She's great. Anyway.
And we've got a question for you, Kyle.
For me?
For you.
That's weird.
This one comes from James M. He says, Kyle, what is your ranking of the Terminator movies, and what did you think of Genesis?
I didn't see Genesis, so I don't know. My rankings are 2, 3, and 4. Those are the ones I've seen, and that's my order for them. The 2 being the best and 4 being the worst. Do I really have any reasons why I'd say that? Not necessarily. 2 is a cinematic masterpiece, of course. I have not seen the first one, even though I really should, because I also hear people saying that sometimes it's better than 2. Some people say it's better than 2. I don't know that, but probably. That happens a lot. Yeah, other than that, 3 was kind of a silly action movie that had some pretty cool ideas. And 4, I don't know, 4 kind of lost me, which is Salvation. Yeah, 4 kind of lost me. I was like, I'm not really into this. For some reason, I don't know. I'm trying to remember much of 4. All I really remember is that's the one where Christian Bale got mad at the lighting guy, isn't it? Is that the one where he went off the deep end and started screaming at a crew member? Can't remember. You're saying if that was
4, and I'm going, there was a 4th one?
Yeah. Well, Salvation is the 4th one, yeah.
Which one was Genesis? Is Genesis the one with the Terminator that thinks it's a people?
Genesis is the 5th one that just came out a few years ago, or however long ago it was. The most recent one. I don't know. I didn't see it. I heard it sucked. But I didn't see it.
Which one was the one that had the Terminator that thought it was people?
It might be Genesis. I'm not sure.
I don't know.
Maybe it was Salvation. All I remember about Salvation was they couldn't get Arnold to actually come in and come back, but they did like a CGI recreation of him younger at some point, and it was weird, and it didn't look very good, and it all took place in the future. Well, most of it did, and yeah. Sin says the 6th one is Dark Fate, so yeah, I don't know. The second one is a classic, though.
Absolutely.
Yeah. The third one's just silly. Although there's some really cool parts of it, like that the chase through LA with the fire truck is pretty awesome. It's pretty ridiculous that they actually did most of those stunts too. They didn't just do them in CGI, which is cool.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, that's about it. That's about all I can say about Terminator movies. I'd have to rewatch them. I have to watch the first one first. So, jeez. And I haven't even watched
done commentaries in forever. Maybe we should do Terminator movies.
Maybe. I haven't done Sarah Connor. I haven't even watched Sarah Connor Chronicles. I heard good things about it, but never watched it. So, yeah. That's it, though. That's all I got. And that's all we got for the Q&A this week. But we do have some comments from some nice people. We got one from Marco J. He says, "Hello, I just read Tangle and Whisper from Comic-Con, and I'm not here to ask a question, but to make a statement. This comic shows how much I miss having a Sonic Universe book, and the Tangle and Whisper issue number 1 is so good. I love getting invested in new comic character stories like Whisper. I hope you get to write Sonic Universe monthly, not only as miniseries. Looking forward to the rest of T&W's adventures."
Thank you, Marco. I know that Tangle and Whisper number 1 has done very well. Hopefully the rest of the miniseries trends similarly. The more love you show to the miniseries, the more that the folks at IDW go, hey, people want more Sonic books. Let's fund more Sonic books. So the more interest you show monetarily, the more likely it is we'll get to see stuff like Tangle and Whisper, and who knows, maybe a sister book. It might be a little early, but then again, I didn't expect us to get a spin-off miniseries with comic exclusive characters this early on. So I've given up trying to predict it.
Yeah.
Just show love. Get stuff.
Yeah. It's awesome. All right. And our last comment comes from Shadster98. "Well, as a 21-year-old 82nd Airborne trainee at Fort Bragg, I like your Sonic stories and thank you for the moments you have made. I love the comics and the shows. I love it, man."
I'm so glad you do. Be safe out there and thank you for your service.
Yes. And Fort Bragg is North Carolina, is it not?
It certainly is.
Yes. So, cool.
Not that I want to Fort Bragg about it.
Cool. All right. Thanks, everybody, for submitting your questions and your comments. Much appreciated.
Alrighty, we are going to give a big thank you to everyone who makes this show possible. Thank you to Daniel H., Eric F., Connell T., Alex P., Andrew D., Blue Title Gamer, Koopling Crew 128, Frederick, Scruffymatt, Saturn Flicky, Chris A., John B., Jennifer R., Reverend the Light, Lisa M., PC the Unicorn, Dois Diz Den, Dave M., Daniel B., Mike B., Sam P., Sam Cybercat, Degama F., Wow, Brody M., Neil H., Justin G., Dan M.S., Silly String, Takaro, Lee H.K., Chevelle, Don B., Sanfrets, Taco El Gato Comics, John M., James K., Adam B.T., Overthinking Films, and Ron.
I guess I should have left the number off of Koopaling Crew, because I have Koopaling Crew 64 in the Discord, but they're Koopaling Crew 128 on the Patreon. That's a little awkward.
Oh, they know who they are.
Yes, Koopaling Crew. That's you. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Kyle, where can they find you when the show's done?
You can head on over to Twitter at KyleJCRB, where you can find me there. I'm just chilling, hanging out, mostly by myself. And KNGI.org. Where you can find archived episodes of the BumbleKast in MP3 downloadable format, and you can listen to them there. You can also find my other show, Nitro Game Injection, which streams live on Mondays at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, also at kngi.org. And, yeah, so that's where you can find me and my stuff. What about you, Ian?
You can find me on Twitter at Ian Flynn BKC, or head over to bumbleking.com. That is my personal website with my full portfolio, schedule for upcoming books, con schedule, because Fan Expo is next week, everybody! I'm going to be there with Aaliyah Baker and Adam Bryce Thomas. Come by if you can. And other cool stuff. I don't know. I haven't looked at the website in a while. You should. Tell me what's on there.
There's a calendar on there that tells you about what's going on in your professional life when things get released. That's pretty cool. That's pretty handy. That's actually sometimes more useful than the official official publisher calendars and stuff. Like, when is this stuff coming out? Who knows? I don't know. Head on over to bumbleking.com and you'll
to
find
be
that.
useful.
Head on over to bumbleking.com and you'll find out when Ian's things are coming out, usually before the publishers even do.
You can also follow the show or contact us at BumbleKast on Twitter, BumbleKast@yahoo.com via email, and you can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, or just about anywhere else you listen to podcasts.
Pretty much. Also, I forget to put Stitcher on here, but yeah, Stitcher is also an option. You can also head on over to the Bumble store at shop.spreadshirt.com/Bumble store and get you some Bumble gear for your Bumble house or your Bumble body. Whichever you want to put some Bumble stuff on, you can Bumble it up.
I like that. You can Bumble it up.
Mm-hmm.
That might have to become a slogan. I can do this all day. What do you mean? By bumbling it up. Anyway, you can also catch BumbleKast Gaming live every Sunday about 10 p.m. Eastern Time. Make sure you follow BumbleKast on Twitter to get announcements or follow the Discord because sometimes things change. We also have occasional shows throughout the week. So again, follow those two venues and you'll get the latest news on when we're going to be streaming some gaming goodness.
Yes. Subscribe on YouTube and you'll find out when things are going down.
There's also that.
There's also the little bell that you can click if you really want to get notified every time something happens. Like, I don't know.
Clearly you're not interested when you subscribe. You need to press 2 buttons. Thanks, YouTube.
Yeah, kind of annoying. Yeah. Anyway, that's going to do it for this edition of the BumbleKast. We'll be back next week.
We'll see you, in 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
For big old 99.
Yep, and we'll see you on BumbleKast Gaming, of course. But, yep, 99's coming up, and then 100. Oh, boy.
Have a good night, everybody.
Bye! Ay. Episode 100. Jeez. That one's ridiculous. Man, 100... I'm done with the list of questions for episode 100, and it's a beast. It's a beast. I think we're gonna have to record that one in sessions, Ian. We're gonna have to record that one in shifts because the show notes for that episode, they're 10, 11 pages long, and it's all Q&A. It's ridiculous.
What we do for our fans. But first, episode 99 in 2 weeks. We'll see you there. Alrighty, gang. I need to go. Ooh, computer is just about to shut down on me. That's another reason to go.
Hey! Good timing.
Hey! The computer says, bonk, I'm dying. I guess it's time to go.
You've been listening to the BumbleKast, a co-production of Bumble King Comics and the KNGI Network. Original theme music composed by Ken Coda Snyder. Remixed intro by Tropes. Find out more information, along with podcast feeder links, MP3 downloads, and more at bumbleking.com and kngi.org. Bye! Except I'm still here. Ah! Maybe I'll turn the recording off.